All right, so welcome everyone to the last day of the main workshop, where we have 3 sessions remaining. Tomorrow we will have some side meetings and especially the capacity building event that we talked about quite a few times over the course of this week. I have a few organizational announcements to make, as usual, as every day. And in regards to the capacity building, some of you mentioned that they did not receive the registration link. It seems that our email address maybe was considered the email address from which the email was sent was considered to be spam or suspicious by some email servers and therefore did not reach you. In case you did not receive that email, just let us know and we can forward you the link again. Some of you as well, if you received the link and tried to register last night, you may have seen that the link had expired. You could not register anymore. This was now fixed by Jonathan. Okay. This was now fixed by Jonathan, so the link is once again available. And actually, Jonathan just sent me a beautiful QR code, which I will share with you. So, if you have not received the registration link and you want to register, you can just scan the QR code. Okay, you can scan the QR code and you can register, and that will be maybe then the fastest way to solve this. So let's leave this up for a few minutes as you take the time to register if you have not managed to do so. In the meanwhile, if you had registered, you should have received last night an email from Jonathan with some instructions on how to prepare for the workshop. I would advise you to read those carefully and take the preparatory steps included in those guidelines before the capacity building session tomorrow. If you just registered now, I'm guessing Jonathan will send a second wave of such emails so that you all receive it. Did everyone who wanted to register via the link but couldn't so far have the opportunity to do so via the QR code? Anyone still working on it? I see one person with the phone up. Maybe you just want to take a picture of me, Javier. I'm not sure. All right, sounds good. With this, I think I have no more organizational announcements to make at the moment. So we can start the first session of the day, which is about global data exchange initiatives. So we will switch back to the presentation. And this session is chaired by me, so I will hand it over to myself for the introduction of the session. So the way this will work is quite simple. We're going to have a single presentation done by me, a fairly long one. And the point of this presentation will be to put out there some issues that we have or that we have noticed over the past 10 years with how we manage and implement our global DSDs. And the point of this session is to try to find, with your help, for some solutions. So in my presentation yesterday, I mentioned that I didn't come with any solutions, but with some requests for feedback. Here it's been worse, because I'm asking for your actual help in solving these issues. So we're going to have the presentation. And after the presentation, or over the course of the presentation, there will be a couple of Slido questions that we're going to discuss at the end of the presentation. Then we're going to have a breakout session. So half of you are going to stay here in this room, half of you are going to go downstairs. And during those breakout sessions, we're going to try to discuss solutions to the different problems that I listed or to other problems that I forgot to list. The breakout sessions will be moderated by myself and by my colleague Galia, whom you have certainly had the chance to meet over the course of this week. So that's how the session is going to be run. When it comes to the presentation itself, it serves the purpose a bit also maybe of a therapy session for me, where I can just, tell all the problems that I've had over the past few years related to the global DSDs. If it looks like I'm ranting a bit at some point, well, it might be because I'm ranting a bit. But so yeah, I'm looking for your emotional support as well. So the first global DSDs were introduced about 10 years ago. If I'm not mistaken, the first package for national accounts was published in 2013. Some of you were around for that. Maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong. But that was more than 10 years ago. And since then, well, we have kept that initial package updated, and we have introduced new ones. First of all, before we see a bit what are the global DSDs that exist today, what is a global DSD? Because it is a term that has a definition, and actually has a definition in the SDMX glossary. It's a DSD that has been agreed by a number of international organizations, and that it is designed to be a structure for global use, so to be used by several different countries, several different geographical regions, and covering a whole domain or potentially even more than one domain, statistical domain, with one or more SDMX sponsor organization involved, and that is recognized and endorsed by the SDMX sponsors. So it's not just that you can make a DSD, say, well, I have a DSD that I'm using with two other organizations, I call it a global DSD. To be recognized as a global DSD, it has to be approved by the sponsors. There's also a review ingrained in this process of the DSD by the statistical working group and by the technical working group. And once it's been approved by the sponsors, it goes into the global registry, right? That's where all the global DSDs are stored. So it is fairly simple then for anyone, once you know what a global DSD is and what the process looks like, it's fairly easy for anyone to see, okay, what global DSDs are actually available. Because you just go to the registry and you see what DSDs are available. And there's not thousands. There's a few. And they cover the following domains. We have national accounts, consumer price indices, balance of payments, System of Environmental Economic Accounting, also known as SEA, International Merchandise Trade Statistics, also known as IMTS, Foreign Direct Investment, Education Statistics, and Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, as well. Those are the different domains that are currently covered by available and recognized global DSDs. And most of these fall under the same umbrella. So out of the 8 domains that are covered, and I think overall we have 8 domains and around 20 DSDs, and 5 of these domains and around 3/4 of the DSDs are covered by under the umbrella of the SDMX Macroeconomic Statistics Ownership Group, right? So we have an ownership group that was behind the creation and maintenance of most of these DSDs in the domain of macroeconomic statistics. So there has been a big push in that sector and much less in everything else. We also have some DSDs under development. One still under the umbrella of this SDMX Macroeconomic Statistics Ownership Group about residential property price indices, also known as RPPI. And we have one under development for labor statistics, which has been under development for a while. And and maybe there's some other initiatives that I'm not aware of, but those are definitely the main ones. And okay, we've been doing this for 10 years. We've been trying to create or implement global DSDs for 10 years now. And it may be time to try to draw some lessons learned, see what are some of the success criteria. I have personally been mostly involved, I've been involved in 6 of these 8 domains closely, and mostly involved in the macroeconomic statistics, DSDs, and their maintenance, because Eurostat is coordinating the regular maintenance and updates of these DSDs. So maybe some of my conclusions are a bit biased towards that, and there may be conclusions coming from the domains that I have not involved with. But in general, what has led to success has been the fact that there was already a common methodological framework and concept definitions. I think whenever we had cases of trying to make a global DSD where there was disagreements on concepts and definitions, it either didn't go very far or discussions got bogged down in methodological issues. And in most cases, we had a strong top-down approach, right? We had a strong mandate from the hierarchy to develop these global DSDs. So in the case of the SDMX macroeconomic statistics DSDs, the ownership group is at director level. There was, especially at the beginning of the last decade, a very strong push to have this done. When it comes to the SDG, there is a strong mandate from the UN Secretary General to have this done. There is at least one example where there was more of a bottom-up approach, and I think this is the example of education, where actually we had a joint data collection that already existed, and we kind of codified it using SDMX. So there was a very good collaboration framework already in place with common templates for data collection, but just a bit outdated in the way it was run, and SDMX provided some modernization to that. But other than that, there have been few, I would say, successful or somewhat successful bottom-up cases that I can think of. And here comes the first Slido question of the day. Sorry, I need to activate the Slido, otherwise this is not going to work. So just give me a second. Okay, now it should be working. We're going to see the results at the end. So you should be able to, it's a question about which global DSD your institution is using. And it should be a multiple choice question. It's not multiple choice. Ah, great. Let me see if I can change this. Give me a second. Let's try it again. Ah, yes. Apparently, to make it multiple choice, I have to activate the multiple choice option. Yeah. It wasn't clear. Sorry. All right, let's try it again. Now you should be able to select multiple choices, and you can also edit your response in case you already sent a single choice response and you want to amend it. So I'm going to show the results later. In the meanwhile, just I need to answer as well, actually. I'm also using some of these. All right. Okay. Well, we had enough responses, I think. As I mentioned, I'm going to lock the voting now, and I'm going to show the results at the end. So thank you for voting. Keep Slido open on your phone because you're going to have another question later on during the rest of the presentation. Anyway, moving on. So we have this 10-year experience in doing this, and over these 10 years, obviously, there are some issues that popped up. And I'm going to list the 3 or 4 main issues that have annoyed me greatly over the past, well, not 10 years because I wasn't involved 10 years ago, but let's say 6. And maybe you have some other issues that you want to add to that, but well, I'm doing the presentation, so I'll start with mine. One is a problem that was already mentioned by Abdullah in his presentation yesterday. Yesterday. It is the high cost of adding dimensions. So as you know, in SDMX, according to the SDMX information model, every time we want to add a dimension, we are making a backwards incompatible change. You're adding a dimension, and whatever data set was valid before is not valid anymore. Even if you have no intention of using that dimension, you don't care about that dimension, in order to be compliant with the new version of the DSD, including that dimension, you need to take it into account. You need to add it in your system, you need to map it. Depending on the tools that you use, it can be easy, but it can also be tough, and it's annoying, and it's difficult to coordinate when you're trying to have a global framework with 180 countries supposedly having to adapt to it. So this is quite an annoying problem. And it has also, besides having, let's say, creating some complexity when you want to add a dimension, it has some severe impact on and negative consequences on how we design global DSDs and the process to design them. So the first thing is that it's very difficult to start small. We always, Abdullah mentioned this the other day as well, but when you ever talk to software development, everyone says hey, you have to be agile, fail fast. You cannot do that with the global DSDs. Since adding a dimension carries a big adaptation cost, what happens is, whenever you want to make a global DSD, you try to look 5 years ahead into the future, 10 years ahead into the future, and guess what you might need 5 years from now or 10 years from now. And you end up having these kind of surreal discussion. It's like, well, I may need this breakdown in when something will happen in 7 years. So let's add it. How we're going to code it, who knows? It's 7 years from now, but we need to have a code list. So let's just try to come up with a code list. And it makes the discussion last a long time. They're not very productive. They are beset by uncertainty because none of us are able to foresee the future. If we were, probably wouldn't be here. We would be enjoying the benefits of our stock market investments somewhere in a beach in the Pacific. I don't know. So we're not very good at that, and it brings a lot of uncertainty to the whole thing, and it makes for discussion that are not very productive. And the idea is I need to have something definitive. As soon as I publish my first DSD, I want it to last for several years. I need to build into it all the possible requirements that may come up in the future. So you do that. It takes a long time then to come up with your global DSD, and inevitably you do have unforeseen requirements that come up, right? You spend 2 years discussing about all the dimensions we'll need in the next 7 years, and 1 month later you realize, oh, wait, should have added a dimension. And what happens then? Because you don't want to add a dimension. You want to add a dimension because it's very difficult to adapt the DSD for everyone. You end up having these trash dimensions. I call them trash dimensions, no offense to the dimensions concerned. You have this custom breakdown dimension, this composite breakdown dimension that was mentioned by Abdullah, where we kind of put everything in that we couldn't fit elsewhere. Or you transform good dimensions into trash dimension as well. To me, the best example is the unit measure dimension in the macroeconomic statistics DSDs. I mean, whenever we have a requirement that we don't know where to fit, we kind of overload the measure dimension with the unit measure dimension with this. So that's not good for the conceptual correctness of what we're doing. But it is an effect of having a model that is quite inflexible in the addition of dimensions. The second issue that I have, well, yeah, maybe the title to this slide is a bit too strong. Okay. So the process itself for making changes, there is an inherent complexity which is not created by SDMX. That's not. It's having to agree when you have a DSD that is owned by 7 international organizations and it is used by 100 organizations. Of course, you cannot just unilaterally say, I'm going to add a code. Whatever change you make needs to be agreed. It makes sense. Whether SDMX exists or not, you would need to have this kind of approval procedure, which is a bit bureaucratic, but okay, it needs to be there, fine. But one thing that SDMX could help us avoid is the difficulty in applying these changes, making it a bit lighter on making it a bit lighter the way to implement these changes. So the thing is, we have these global DSDs. They're agreed by many people. Everyone wants to be able to keep track of changes, so we apply very strictly the versioning guidelines. We basically, every time we change something, even if it's just we add a code, we change a label, we make a new version of the artifact affected, following the versioning guidelines. It can be a minor version, it can be a trivial version, but it's a new version. And as soon as I do that, so I've corrected a label in one code list, I need to change the references of all its ancestors. So okay, I changed the label in, what was the recent example? Iceland, yes. So I don't know, the Iceland currency has been since 10 years spelled wrongly. Fine. We need to change the label. Okay, it's a new version of the currency code list, which means I have to make a new version of all the DSDs that use that code list, 6 or 7 DSDs, which means I need to make a new version of all the data flows that are using those DSDs, 50 data flows, which means I need to make a new version of all the constraints that refer to those data flows. Yeah, 50 constraints. And obviously in doing that, by the way, I will forget something. So I will always, there was a high risk of forgetting that there was something that needed to be updated and wasn't updated. And it's annoying, and it takes a long time to do this. Just doing this and then publishing the results, putting them online, takes more than a few days. So, I mean, doing it and checking it and making sure everything has been done correctly. And the result is that making these updates is work intensive, and so we don't do it every day, right? The change to the code list for the Icelandic currency is very easy to make, but we're not going to make it immediately because it will take us 1 second to make the change and 1 week to do all the other changes and publish them. So we do it once a year. We have an annual release cycle, and it pains me to my core that someone says, you know, the Icelandic colleagues say, you misspelled our country name or our currency name, and I say, good point, I'll take care of it next year. No problem, just wait 1 year, it will be fixed. It would be, we should be able to do better, especially for these small things. And the third difficulty is the handling of so-called variants. Here I'm using a term that Edgardo often uses. I'm not sure if it's the official term or the correct term to use, where, you know, we have an official code list from the SDMX Standards Working Group, but everyone needs a few more codes or a few different codes, and then they make their own variant of it, adding the needed codes, right? I used CL area for this example because it was the most striking example. In the global DSDs, we're using 4 different CL areas maintained by a different agency. So we have one maintained by the IMF used in macroeconomic statistics, one maintained by the UNESCO Institute for Statistics for Education, one maintained by the SDG interagency expert group for the SDGs, and one by UNSD for IMTS. And we have in the registry this beautiful SDMX official code list that is not used by anything. It's there. It's not used directly in the sense that all of these, the thing is that all of these code lists are variants. They have a huge overlap with the official one, but they're different and they follow a different life cycle. They follow different lives, and you don't necessarily see the links. Yes, I can go there and put representation maps or code list maps and show that, but then I would need to maintain them, and it's yet another thing that I need to version every time I change something somewhere, and I don't want to do it, so we don't do it. The most striking example is education. The education code list has one more code. There's a difference in one code, one additional code compared to the official one. It's Kosovo, because Kosovo doesn't have a code in ISO, but has it in M49. That's it. So new version, new variant just for this. Now, I'm not saying anything new. Aspetta un attimo. Emotional support. Okay, fine. If it's for emotional support, it's okay.
No, just when you look at this slide, this highlights another issue, which also matters in the context of global DSDs, because if you look at the last two rows in here, SDGs and IMTS, they're both maintained. Both of these data structures are maintained by the UN Statistics Division. But they have different code lists. And because they have different code lists, one is it's a problem in itself, because clearly, within the same organization, you can't synchronize your code list. But even worse, you can't even publish it on both of them under the UNSD moniker, because they would conflict with each other. Which is why luckily we realized that in time, and we had to publish all the SDG artifacts under the agency IG SDGs, even though they're actually maintained by UNSD. And that doesn't make it any easier to work with the global DSDs, because it makes it even more difficult to find your way around them.
Thank you for the emotional support, Abdullah, much appreciated. So I'm not saying anything new. These are things that all of you who have worked with global DSDs or just work with managing SDMX objects know. And I don't want to paint a picture saying, oh, this is awful, I just discovered this, please fix it, because we know these things. And there are fixes and solutions that exist or could exist. So for the first issue, the high cost of adding dimensions, we have this proposal in SDMX 3.1 to make this easier, right? To diminish the cost of adding dimensions, which could hopefully fix the problem. Great, but we don't have it yet. It's in a version of SDMX that doesn't yet exist. We need to be approved, then we need to upgrade the tools to work with it. It will take a while for this to be in place. The issue with the versioning and the references, we have a solution for this in theory. In SDMX 3.0, the referencing using wildcard and the use of semantic versioning. I'm very much looking forward to that, but I cannot use that yet because the FMR, unless something has changed in the very recent past, is not supporting the wildcard versioning. So I'm really waiting for this. Galia and I are refreshing the FMR every day, waiting for this feature to appear. Soon. So, that will be a game changer for us and for the way we manage the global DSDs. And then for the handling of variants as well, in SDMX 2.0, we have a very good feature that I was really happy about, I am really happy about, which is the code list composition or inheritance, which I have used for the first time. The UIS, the education variant of CL area, is, since 1 month, a composition of inherits from the SDMX and adds the code for Kosovo. But it's still, it's not very visible, to be honest. It's difficult to trace these relationships. And so when you look at it, when anyone looks at the registry, there's no way of easily telling, oh, this is actually, yes, it is a variant, but there's a 99.9% overlap with SDMX. It's just reusing the SDMX, which, I mean, it's definitely a good step forward, but I think maybe at the level of the UI or somewhere we can make it a bit more visible so that the mess looks a bit less like a mess. And so it's also easier for maintainers to understand these kind of links, which are now a bit hidden in a way. So for example, you can look for references between objects, but this kind of codeless inheritance doesn't count as a reference. So it's a bit hidden. And not very visible, which can lead to people forgetting, not understanding what's going on, and things like this. Now, in all of this, I want to put, to just add one point. It's about the implementation of SNA 2025. So our whole framework for macroeconomic statistics is based on the System of National Accounts 2008, which in the European context then became the European System of Accounts 2010. That is the methodological framework on which we have based our macroeconomic statistics DSDs. There is currently work ongoing for a 2025 version of the SNA, so an update to the SNA. And this will be, I think, a good moment to try and make a new version of the DSDs that try as much as possible to make use of the latest features and maybe fix some of the different modeling issues that appeared over time in the macroeconomic statistics DSDs. And actually, to be honest, I'm not very involved in this work. If there's anyone who is or who has suggestions for how SDMX could maybe contribute even to the work on the new SNA, so that we're able to foresee what is going to happen and prepare accordingly, I would be happy to get that input. Anyway, this is one class of issues. It's the modeling and maintenance issues that I went over. But then we also have really low-level implementation issues that, once again, annoy me greatly. The first one is the presence of interoperability issues. The whole selling point for SDMX is, or the way we have told people that SDMX brings value is, well, now you have a common DSD used by several organizations. You can send your data once and you're done, right? You don't need to deal with different structures, different formats, which is mostly true, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes we still have issues where different organizations have trouble with specific SDMX compliant formats. So they accept some, but not others. Or the level to which structural validation is applied is different. So maybe we are a bit stricter than others. And so we consider a file to be invalid while others consider it to be valid. I have an example. It's going to be with DCB, not because I have anything against DCB, but just we have a very high amount of exchange with DCB, so we also have more issues, for sure. But just the other day, just last week, we sent a file to DCB in structure-specific 2.1 structure-specific time series format. And we found out, I mean, I've been working with DCB now on this for 7 years, and I found out yesterday, oh, that's not accepted by DCB because they accept the structure-specific, but not the structure-specific time series. Oh, I mean, fine, we can adapt, that's not the issue, but it's these kind of problems that then when someone sends us structure-specific time series and we send it to DCB, it doesn't work, right? So I'm not sure. And it's difficult to explain to data providers, right? They say, well, but I sent you the same file I sent to the ECB or to IMF. Why are you complaining? Yeah. It still happens. Not an easy problem to solve, but it's something that maybe we can find some solutions to. And then there's another thing that is a bit of a shame, which is the fact that we have some opportunities that have not been fully implemented. We have this pool approach. I mean, it's one of the beauties of SDMX. To me, it's really a selling point that you can have this data registration and subscription mechanism where you register your data in a registry, and then you can send an update and people are subscribed to it and they know that there's been an update and they can pull the data. It's great. It's really a selling point. But we haven't really implemented it much, have we? I think there's maybe 3 organizations that have set this up for a couple of data sets. And we have used it mostly for exchange between ourselves as SDMX sponsors, whereas it could be much more widely used as well. I mean, it's interesting for anyone. So the point is a bit, and I keep on saying this about SDMX, look, SDMX is a really powerful pool approach mechanism, but if we're not using it, can I still sell it, right? Or is it a bit, how to say that? Is it a bit naive to use that as a selling point if we're not actually using it? And why? Why is that? Is it complicated? Is it just that there's no reason to do it? I mean, I see clearly the reason. Why don't we do it? I don't know. And now we're coming to the end. We have a second Slido. Well, you should have it soon. A Slido survey where you should have one question asking you to rank these 5 issues, and an open question asking you to think about new ones as well that I didn't mention, but that you find are relevant in the context of maintaining global DSDs, or even if not global DSD, let's say DSDs that have a high number of users and owners. So please go ahead and answer these 2 questions. All right, I still see quite a few answers coming in. Okay. No, keeps on going up. Okay, it seems to have stabilized, so I will close the voting. If you're still typing something in the open text, click send now, because otherwise you won't be able to send it. Yeah, I think you're all fine. All right, so locking the voting. And yes, so what we're going to do, no, let's do first. Let's go look at the Slido responses first, and then we'll have a quick discussion on that, and then we'll go to the breakout sessions. So you all voted on these Slido questions, and now I'm going to try to share the results from my PC. If we could switch the input to the HDMI. Perfect. All right, so these are the results on the global DSDs being used. Unsurprisingly, I would say, national accounts and balance of payments are the most widely used. They're also the first ones to become available. And also, unsurprisingly to me, the bottom 3 are the IMTS DSD, the SIA DSD, and the education DSD. And this is something that overall corresponds a bit to my expectations. I do wonder for the Sustainable Development Goals, I would have expected maybe a bit more there, but we have an audience that is very largely skewed towards international organizations which use it less. I would say that if we had an audience of only national counterparts, I would expect the SDG to be substantially higher, I would say. But yeah, overall, apart from that, I wouldn't see any big surprises. And then if we go to the other questions. Oh, sorry, I should maybe show the results, otherwise we're not gonna. Okay, so most people so overall, let's say the high cost of adding dimensions is seen as the highest problem, followed by the management of versioning. The interoperability issues is the third, and the handling of variants the fourth. To be honest, I am a bit surprised. I would have expected the handling of variants to be a bit higher. It is true that it's a problem that has a lower impact. Maybe it's just that it annoys me more, just conceptually, and that's why I feel it's higher. But overall, I think it's a good input to know, and I'm really looking forward to see who wrote something for the other issues. Okay, so what do we have? What is this? Okay. Inflexibility of organizations. The NSOs have for supported 2 DSDs, one for reporting, one for dissemination. Very good one, indeed. The fact that we often have to have different models for reporting and for dissemination. I would like to add one thing to that. I don't know who put it. Usually we use the DSDs for data reporting, so they follow certain modeling paradigms. But there are some organizations that want to use it for dissemination as well. And it makes the discussions on the modeling even more difficult because there's actually not a common agreement on the use, and there's different use cases that need to be handled by the same model. And it becomes difficult then to come to an agreement about how to model things. Emotional support on the trash dimensions. Reporters not participating in the definition of the DSD. Relevant point. Global DSDs are not suitable for dissemination. There's disincentive for reporters. I mean, once again, we're hitting on the same point here. Migrating the DSDs and data flows to the new SDMX versions, deprecating support for old versions, which to me is part also of the interoperability issues, because I still need to support JSMIS. It doesn't matter that it's been deprecated by the sponsors. I still have JSMIS flows, and it's difficult to then advance with new features as long as you have to support still those old things. Don't think there's a process for global DSD design and implementation. Well, here I would not agree. Is David in the room? Do we have a process for global DSD, or did you make that comment? You made that comment. Okay.
Yeah, so yeah, I made the comment because I don't think that there is, you know, perhaps if we do have a process, then it may make it easier, you know, to actually get other global DSDs up and running. But also the fact, you know, design is one thing, but then going to implementation, this should really be either part of the project or that a separate project, you know, ongoing from that. So yeah. That's it. Thanks.
Okay, that's a good point. To be honest, David, I always consider that the kind of checklist for DSD designers was sufficient, but...
Well, I think for global DSDs probably need a bit more because of the amount of time, you know, it takes to like get everybody around the table, and as the point you said on getting agreement, you know, from so many kind of stakeholders. So yeah, and the rollout as well, you know, it covers a lot more than, you know, one agency or just a few agencies. So.
I think Yuri wants to complement that.
Yeah, on a different topic, I think, I mean, okay. We could understand that the problem with adding new dimensions, or the difficulty of adding new dimensions, is somehow tied to this problem that I want to mention. But many of us have experienced that we cannot use the global DSD data model as a representation of the data statically because it's not rich enough, or certain items are not defined as dimension, but attributes like the table identifier or something cleaner. And so many of us who have an SDMX-based system for production or pre-dissemination, we cannot just simply map out into a physical state of the data to be reported. It has to be done on the fly, or we have to have custom systems that do this mapping on the fly, because the global DSDs, at least for national accounts, are only good to generate data, but when it comes to physical representation, it kind of overlaps in too many ways to be practical.
Yeah, that's a very good, maybe what we can do, let's just finish going through the different things, and then we'll open for first Q&A before we go to the breakout sessions. We're almost at the end anyway. I mean, there was someone who mentioned the pool mode as a problem. I'm happy to see that. I had not listed it among the issues because I thought it was less felt as a problem, but I'm happy to see someone reported it. And the review process should be updated. Okay, I can agree. Maybe in the breakout session we can have more details. So I think these are all very interesting comments. The point here is to try and get your brains working for the breakout session, because it's in the breakout session that I want to have your input. And so in that interest, let's have maybe, if you have any more comments or any more questions at this point, let's have them. It can be fuel for the breakout session, then we'll go to the breakout session. So I think David had already raised his hand, then we had Juan, Ole, Abdullah, Cedric. Okay, so David, go first. I think you already have the mic anyway.
Yeah, so just a couple of quick comments. So on the, trying to use the DSD for dissemination. So I think actually in the National Accounts Guidelines, it actually says more or less that the global DSD is for reporting. Okay, and I've had to kind of trot that paragraph out to like our statisticians who said they wanted to create a cube for presentation, but I said no. It says here that it's only for reporting. So perhaps in the future we should be when the DSD is for reporting, then we have to be a bit more clearer on that this is not meant for dissemination, which could help, reduce the scope and could help, people realize that this will be very complicated for dissemination. So that may help there. And just my other quick comment is, I think your example, Luca, on changing the version for a label update, that doesn't actually agree with the versioning guidelines. Okay, but
oh really?
Because if you change the label, then you don't have to actually change the version. But I do see a problem when you change a label and you want other people to like pick up on it and change their DSD. So I think that this may be more of a kind of notification, that the structure has updated, so other people should change their structure as well. But really, it shouldn't result in a version update.
It might be maybe then more of a something that was put in the macroeconomic statistics DSD group, kind of on top, to make sure that everyone was was informed properly of every change. I thought that, okay, I haven't read clearly the modeling guidelines in a while. I thought that it was a trivial change, let's say third-digit change when you did that. Okay, good to know. But okay, then it's not necessarily the guidelines themselves; it's the practice in place in specific places that may go beyond the guidelines. I'm taking some notes in the meanwhile. So I think you had Juan who had raised his hand here in front.
Okay. Well, I will reserve the possible solution for the breakdown, but I just want to say something. Maybe from your point of view, some of these things are a problem for the collectors or the institution which are requesting the information. But if you put your side from the reporter's point of view, maybe it's not so bad having some stability about the DSDs. Just imagine how much effort it needs to change the way you collect the information or adding new dimensions to something that must be operated by the statistical office. So maybe it's not so bad to have some stability on the global DSDs. And, well, about the variants, about other things, maybe the SDGs can have some good practice that have been implemented and can be used. And I surprised the reason it was not so mentioned, the use of the DSD for the the global DSD for the SDGs. I wonder if the international institution, because I think that most of the people here is from international institutions.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
maybe the reason is not about the reporters, it's about taking the information which is available on the global DSD. So, well, let's think about it.
Okay, good point. We had Ole first, then Abdullah, and then Cedric.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Since you mentioned you sent a file to ECB and we could not receive it, I feel I need to say something.
No, but I didn't want to target you. It's just
No. But we are in the middle. We are in a transition of an old system and a new system. And in the new system, we're using the SDMX core as library. And I would be very surprised if we were not able to also receive this kind of file in our new system. So I would expect this to be an issue with our old system. So, but of course, I would like some more details later, and then I can investigate this.
No. Actually, we know already that the new system will be accepted. That was part of the problem.
Okay.
We tested in our acceptance pre-production environment with the ECB's production environment, and that was really using the new system, so everything worked fine there. And moved to production, it didn't work anymore.
Okay.
So I know you're making efforts, but it's those kind of things. It's difficult for me to explain to my users, right? It's you modernized and now it doesn't work and it worked before.
Yeah,
okay,
for
great.
Sure. Very good. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I'm actually very happy that this discussion is taking place about dissemination and reporting. I'm very unhappy with what I see on the screen because, again, I'm speaking. I mean, I work at the UN Statistics Division. No, Luca, exactly what I see in the notepad.
In the notepad. Sorry, I thought.
Because, I work at the UN Statistics Division, so I cannot speak for countries. I can only speak about what I saw in the countries. I think the elephant in the room is that all these global reporting data flows, they're completely on the side of everything else that the statistical office does. Yes, in the European Union, you can tell the statistical offices that this is how they need to report, and they will report. We at the UN, we only have carrots. We don't have a stick. We can't tell our countries how to report. We have to rely on their goodwill and cooperation and engagement. And if a country doesn't see the value in establishing and putting this great effort, establishing this data flow, and then it gets nothing out of it, why should it do that? When UNSD implemented reporting and data collection for national accounts, our experts, UNSD experts, it took them about 2 months to map our national accounts database to the global data structure definition. And trust me, they're very good experts. But the complexity of this whole thing is huge. And if you're sitting in a country, you have to get your top experts, you have to put them into mapping this data structure, spending 2 months, and then you end up with something with a data flow that you cannot use for anything else other than sending data to UNSD. Would you really would you really go through that effort? Would you really do that? Why? Why on earth? Don't you have other things to do? So it is my from my experience, it is my very strong conclusion that global data flows, global reporting data flows, will only work well when reporting is either free, which is probably impossible, or nearly free. When a country gets a lot of value from global reporting, aside from the reporting itself. In other words, when it can use these data flows for dissemination and structures for dissemination in addition to reporting, and I think I'm convinced it can be done, and I'll save the solutions for the breakout, what?
Okay, that's a very good point. I think we had Cédric right in front of you who wanted to raise his hand before.
Yeah. Yes. I was wondering how to promote better global DSD. What I see, if I want to create my own DSD, usually I check if there is already a code list in the global global registry to use it. And most of the time I see that people take the ownership with their own agency and not use the agency, the source agency, define the global DSD. And in my view, it would be a good point to make easier to reference the global DSD. And if you have to adapt because you have a different code, to be able to submit your request to add it, and you create with a new SMX framework your own code list with the reference to the global DSD, and to wait for that. And also, in my view, it would be better to be community-based for changing. For example, you want to have the country and it's not in your own language, so what you will do, you create your own code list and you put the country in your own language. So this possibility, for instance, to submit to the global registry change that matters for you in a community way would maybe make simpler and more efficient the use of the global DSDs and to have the interoperability. If you change the agency after, it's difficult to follow if it's still aligned with the global reference. So,
I mean, that's a very good point. I mean, I know how to request a change to a global code list or a code list in general, but I don't think we necessarily publish the process very well. Thank you, Cédric. We'll have maybe one more intervention, then we should move to the. I saw Matt maybe wanted to come in. Maybe also you. Do you mind, Yuri, if we give it to Matt? Okay.
Thanks. Yeah, just maybe to pick up on 2 or 3 of your kind of pain points that you mentioned from the tooling perspective. So I already said semantic versioning is soon, right? Because a lot of kind of groundwork has been done on this in SDMX core to actually make it all work, and then it just needs to be kind of put into the actual the product via the UI, to make sure you can semantically link. But one of the kind of offshots of doing that work was the code list composition. Suddenly you click on the code list and it says, actually it's linked to these code lists. I wasn't sure whether that was a bug or not. So I was asking Xavier, is this meant to happen in the REST API? Are these things meant to be linked? And he was like, I don't know. And this kind of shows exactly what Xavier was saying the other day, like things can be interpreted differently. So I think those 2 pain points will go.
I hope so.
Yeah. It's getting there. And just a third point is quite interesting is the formats. Is too much choice a bad thing, right? Because it's like we have this format, this format, this format, and everybody goes, brilliant, I'll use this one or that one. But actually what you're doing is you could be hampering interoperability of systems because people only implement the ones which they want to use. So I think this is something we need to reflect upon.
Yeah. Yeah, on that note, if you allow just a short comment, I think another benefit of 3.0 was to have eliminated a bit all the different flavors of SDM XML. I think that will help. But then again, those are still being used. So for the time being, we just have one more flavor.
It eliminated the flavors, but made them more complicated at the same time. So.
All right, we will need to go to the breakouts. So let me just go. So I hope this discussion already allowed you to think a bit about more in depth about these questions and propose solutions during the breakouts. I'm going to switch back to the presentation if possible, to the main screen. Yes, thank you. So there's these main questions we have during the breakout on the global DSD availability. First of all, do you see potential for global DSDs to be developed in new domains? If so, which domains? And what should we do as a community to push for this? Data modeling with global DSDs. What modeling issues you find in the current DSDs? I mean, that's very wide. And you can also use that as a therapy session in case you need it. Third question about the maintenance of the global DSDs. If you have ideas to improve the current process for the maintenance of the DSDs. And then implementation issues. What further steps could be taken to solve interoperability issues? And what obstacles exist to the implementation of the pool approach? So the way this is going to work is quite easy. We're going to take... You're a bit imbalanced, aren't you? Huh? I mean, there's more people on this side than on that side. All right. We're going to have this side, except the last row, stay here, okay? And this side and the last row is going to go downstairs to discuss these questions. Galia, do you want to stay here? You will go downstairs? Okay, you have flip charts downstairs. So this side plus the last row, please go downstairs with Galia and Amalia room. Yes, in the Amalia room, and it goes downstairs. The rest, you stay with me and we discuss these issues. We have around 30 minutes, so at 10:35, 10:40, please come back and we're going to conclude. Okay? All right. It's backwards, isn't it? You're right.
It's also.
That makes more sense. Yeah, no, I'm coming I fear I may have sent too many people downstairs now. You can stay here, David. It's okay. It's. I think we have enough people downstairs. No, this is for everyone.
No, but everyone discusses all
Yes.
the questions.
Yes, we have time.
It's just two different groups.
Yes, they're two different rooms. But you can stay here now. I think I sent 20. Okay. All right. So please sit down. Let's discuss.
Okay. Are they all the questions, or do you have
All the questions.
These are
On two sides. We're going to start with these, and there's another side. Okay. All right. So let's start with the first one. The global DSD availability. Do you see domains where we could have global DSDs and we don't? And if so, what should we do to make it happen? Go ahead.
I think the answer is to this first question is very straightforward, and the answer is all of this.
Okay.
I don't see why you need data exchange for some domains and not for the others. It's clear why macroeconomic statistics took off so early and so strongly. It's because this is what the governments want, this is what national agencies want, this is what decision makers want, right? But other than that, I mean, can you say that, well, we need demography more than environment, or we need for social statistics first, and only then we're going to move that? I mean, you name it, environmental degradation. I think it's all of them, really all of them. The only issue I see is if too many global DSDs are developed at the same time, it would be difficult to coordinate, and it actually could lead to interoperability issues if, due to that lack of coordination.
Do you see that as a risk, having too many at the same
Yes.
time?
Yes.
Yeah, because we only have so many STMX experts, right? So there's usually got to be some in the group, along with the subject matter experts.
Okay, I mean, for them, it's not like we have an unending backlog of DSDs waiting to develop. So.
I can imagine, let's say, 5 or 6 global DSDs being
Oh, thank you.
at the same time, and then coordination would manage. Well, I don't say it would be good.
Yuri.
I think that the reason why national accounts went first and many of the macroeconomic statistics is also that how much those statistical domains are coordinated at the global level already. So everywhere where you have nicely harmonized classifications and you have a big book that counts as a Bible, and so everyone agrees on many of the concepts. And from a statistical point of view, it's easier to then barter the global DSD negotiate one. But we have areas where you have much less conformity and much less harmonization. I remember with the labor global DSDs, we had more esoteric variations that we had discussed in the group. And it was obvious that things will not go as fast and won't be able to adjust with the national account.
Indeed, when I mentioned that when there is methodological difference more difficult, I had in mind labor, because that was definitely difficult to accommodate different definitions, different points of view of how to do labor statistics in general. But then do we have examples? Do we know of examples that, okay, there was solid methodology agreed in place that is there and that is ripe, let's say, for some SDMXifying? I don't know. David?
Yeah, well, I mean, I was going to suggest the health domain,
Okay.
which is a huge domain, but I don't think we've got anything yet. But it may be a bit of a challenge as well. I mean, we suggested before it at the OECD, and we had quite some resistance then. But now, even there may be a bit more traction. I mean, especially because with Eurostat, they've had to kind of STMXify anyway. That's for dissemination, but at least at the OECD, they kind of know what STMX is now, and I think that there may be a bit more kind of traction to get something going. But that's like a huge area that I don't think we've got anything.
Well, in health, for example, we do have a joint data collection with the OECD, with Eurostat and the WHO. It's not very wide. I mean, it covers, I think, a system of health accounts, so like health expenditure, and also with the OECD, I think we have something on non-monetary healthcare, so like number of hospitals, number of physicians available, things like this.
But the
which
SHA is I think it's our most popular data set.
Really? Okay.
Or one of them, anyway.
In the old system, it was definitely the top ranking, even came before SMA.
And I guess there's an established framework, so
Mhm.
which is the SHAs.
And maybe people were dyslexic and they were looking for SMA, but further from SHA.
All right. Okay, we got one good proposal. Please, Ingo.
Question. I was not involved and not fully aware of the discussions about the labor market ESD, but what was said about why the macroeconomic statistics were the first ones. most of that seems to apply for, at least for the labor force survey. There's interest by the policymakers, and there's international standards. So I would have thought that the labor market is a big domain, and there are things in the trade, but the LFS itself would have mainly not the primary case for developing a global DSD.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the labor deal, this is a very low hanging fruit, right? Because
we just have to finalize.
We just got to fix some bugs in there.
And publish it, yes.
We spent a long time on this.
Yeah.
So.
There was a lot of work on the Liberal DSD, which,
99% is done.
yeah, but hopefully for the Liberal DSD, which is under development, something will be available soon, indeed.
Yeah, we need to sleep with it.
Yeah. Okay, we need to move on a bit for time. Any ideas on what we could do to push as a community? Abdullah?
Yes, and I mean, why do we have so few global DSDs, and why, for example, the labor DSD has been years in development? Okay, I'm going to offer a debatable point, but my point of view is that it could have something to do with incentives. Because if the countries don't see incentives in implementing SDMX reporting, and the international agencies know that, and they know that even after they publish those global GSDs, the countries will not really take up, then that creates fewer incentives for international agencies to push for the development of global GSDs, right? So, what can be done to address that? Again, based on our experience with the SDG reporting and dissemination, there are a couple of things that can be done. One is making the global GSDs more suitable. I mean, fundamentally, global GSDs need to be made suitable for dissemination. How? On the standard side, we have SDMX 3.0 with code-based inheritance and improved versioning, which makes it easier. And SDMX 3.1, which makes it easier again to have fewer concepts for group lists, which makes it more suitable for dissemination. But that's not coming until a few years from now. What could be done in SDMX 2.1? What could be done in SDMX 2.1 is creating, sponsoring dissemination platforms that are geared towards specific global business. We've had that experience on the SDGs. So, in other words, if a country maps their national data, the national accounts data set to the global DSD, and then they use it for reporting, but at the same time there is a visualization platform available out of the box that they could easily customize for their own use. And so by creating that reporting data flow, they're getting dissemination for free. That's a huge incentive, and it's important that this is not something like a data warehouse stuff, which is fantastic, but has its own place. But this is geared towards a specific domain. It can address the issues with current reporting DSDs not being very suitable for dissemination, because if the dissemination platform is aware of the global DSD, knows how to deal with dimensions, then it can transform the data in a way that makes it much more easier and much more friendly to disseminate. It could be addressed there. Again, we have that experience. We have it with the OpenSDG platform, and we know that it works. And I hope that we will see dissemination platforms for national accounts. I see no reason why we can't have this for national accounts, for global, for indirect investment, for balance of payments. And then yes, and there is a huge incentive for the country. Use SDMX, create that reporting data flow, and and then you get dissemination out of it. And there are issues with it, which I will address in the next question.
Just, are you sure there? Because SDG is a big thing, covering many different sectors and domains. But do you think that many countries would be interested to have like one dissemination platform for national accounts, one for labor, one for,
Yes, why not?
Yeah, okay. David, then we're going to need to move on a bit.
So yeah, I think in my comments earlier on, I think it was a bit too restrictive, maybe saying, this should only be for reporting. But I do think that we should be clearer in the kind of the guidelines what a particular DSD is for, but also we could deliver in the global DSD projects like another DSD or a data flow for dissemination as well, which I don't think that we've done in any instance, right? We've delivered like one set of DSDs, and usually they were for reporting. But I think perhaps like a package that did actually contain like a DSD for dissemination, which could be customized, and the instructions on how it could be customized, or at least suggestions, right? And perhaps like structure maps, representation maps as well, to say how they actually fit together functionally. And I think we could have done this for the national accounts DSDs, but we didn't. We just had this paragraph which said, well, this should only be used for reporting. But then then we have not only NSOs but organisations also using for dissemination, and that was a struggle. And we struggled to say like, well, you shouldn't use it for dissemination. But so if we were a bit more complete in the package that we built, then I think it is possible to.
Interesting point. Thank you, Yuri. And next one.
I'm kind
Are you already
transiting to the
great.
next point in a way.
Lead us to the transition, then to the next point.
It's in line with what David and Abdullah was saying. I think that we have to slightly change our modeling approaches when we design global DSDs and move closer to a dissemination kind of style data set, or at least have the level of scrutiny of model simplicity and clarity that usually you would do when you design for dissemination. So when you design for reporting and exchange, there are 10 agencies around the table, and you can agree in whatever quirky ways to report, because as long as you made the agreement, everything flies. But when you turn from an exchange mode to a pool mode kind of model, even for exchanging, then you kind of can easily slip into the dissemination mode, because the moment you have prepared your data for pooling, it's just opening up to a wider audience, and you have your dissemination ready. So I guess that kind of pool mode mentality and dissemination mentality when you design even for exchange would bring all these kind of benefits. You would probably have more or quicker adoption from all the parties, but it will make the modeling a little bit harder, because you cannot take easily shortcuts. The design has to be cleaner, because for dissemination, I mean, then if you take shortcuts, you have to explain to a much wider audience why you took shortcuts or designs.
Please.
I'm not really contributing, but I have a question to help me to understand. So what factors qualify something as a global DSD? Because I've seen you list a few DSDs here, but I don't see some that I know. And what other types of DSDs exist except global ones?
For example, which ones don't you see listed?
I don't see stuff on international banking or shadow banking. So I don't know.
So I mean, it is a bit of a, so there are DSDs beyond these. You can look at the European fiscal system. We have DSDs that cover most of our statistics, but they are used only within Europe, and they're meant for reporting within the European fiscal system. They're not meant necessarily for wider use, and they only involve Eurostat, no other organizations. Plus, they don't always follow correctly the SDMX modeling guidelines. The idea with the global DSDs is that it's something that has been reviewed by the SDMX community and endorsed by the SDMX sponsors. So you have the kind of a stamp of approval of the SDMX sponsors saying, yes, this is a good DSD for global use and respects, to the extent possible, the SDMX modeling guidelines. So it's more, stamp of approval or quality. And there may be out there already DSDs that are used in quite a wide fashion that maybe just need that stamp of approval and could easily become global DSDs. maybe in that regard, maybe energy a bit. We have a DSD in energy that we use, I think, with the OECD as well and some other organization.
International Energy Agency.
International Energy Agency. Maybe that could be. It could just be, let's say, stamped as a.
Well, there is a common work for research and development, also between Eurostat and the OECD. And I think national accounts is also extending with the distribution of national accounts. So it's still national accounts, but the new DSD.
Yeah, when they have it.
If you are moving on energy, please don't forget to
Energy. I think what you mentioned, R&D.
Yes.
Okay, moving on. Modeling issues. I mean, went through some of them already. You had started, Yuri, to mention, for example, the famous table identifier in national accounts, which causes problems. Any modeling issues that keep you up at night or annoy you at least?
Well, annoy me, I'd say. So some of the global DSDs do this better than others, but for example, for BOP, that DSD, there's no particular reference if it's BPM5, if it's BPM6. The indicator code list seems to be a mix of the two. At least I couldn't figure out immediately sort of what am I looking at. And that's one of the reasons we don't, even though we own it, we don't use it when we go to the countries. The people implementing it know less about BOP than I do, so they're in a worse spot.
So the indicator is a mix of BPM5 and 6?
Well, the dimension, which is called something, but is the equivalent to the, whatever, the accounting entry. And it seemed to be a mix where you'd have things like primary balance, but you'd also have whatever it was called in BPM5. It's my recollection. I haven't looked at it in a while, but that was my recollection.
Maybe to add to that, when we did the remodeling for dissemination in the OECD of many of our data sets, our national accountants insisted that we start off from the global DSD. So rather than having the all data model as the starting point, it was the global DSD. It was probably not the best idea to start off from that, but that was our starting point. And so in that process, we have started to draft a small article on how would you, in general, represent something that has an accounting framework originally in a multidimensional cube. It's not evident at all, but there are, at least in balance of payments and national accounts, you have all these kind of accounts either for stocks or flows, so balance sheets or flow accounts. And I mean, they don't lend themselves naturally to multidimensional representation. However, if you figure out a system or a systematic approach of translating some accounts into a multidimensional model, then you already give a generic recipe for many of these account-based data systems. And I think before attacking again the review of national accounts, we have to have something like that, a generic documentation of what are the guiding principles when you want to translate accounting frameworks into multidimensional cubes. The paper was never completed because our timetable kind of.
But will it be completed?
That's faster, but it's something that maybe we could
finish,
put in the mix and have a discussion. It would be nice if it was broader than just our internal document. We have the scrutiny, but I mean, yeah, we can start the drafting.
Since you opened it up, I mean, David wanted to intervene, but if there's anyone, by the way, who is involved in the SNA 2025 review or has ideas about how SDMX could follow it or be more involved at the early stages, I would be happy to take suggestions here. David?
Yeah, I mean, it's on a bit of a different order point, but the global DSDs, at least I think national accounts, they were created before the SDMX quarterly. You know, so when we coded like all the terms, so maybe it's more to do with interoperability, right? So I think a lot of the things in some of the global DSDs
they don't actually follow the cross-domain concepts and codes. So for interoperability, that's not great.
Yeah, I mean, from my point of view, I think that there's not that many issues in the current TSDs that could be solved in SDMX 2.1, quite honestly, or could be easily resolved. One of them, of course, is the unit of measure, which is very, very. I mean, I don't know a good solution to this, but I admit that this is a very, very complex problem. This is something that could potentially be addressed in SDMX 2.1, but everything else can only be addressed in future versions of the standard. And I think that 3.0 and 3.1 they address most of the issues in global TSDs. And I think that also that the implementation of FAIR principles will help a lot with legacy issues, addressing the legacy issues, which, for example, are very pertinent in the case of Eurostat, because Eurostat has a lot of DSCs that go back 15 years and therefore are not at all synchronized with the cross-domain protest. But looking forward, what I think is one of the really big issues that will need to be resolved is offering countries and other reporters to customize global DSDs for their use. This is going to be a very, very important issue. We have some experience on that in the SDGs, and I can tell you that in SDMX 2.1, it makes me want to cry, because I recently was helping Kenya to customize their global TSD for national use, and I can understand that a simple mortal cannot learn that in a week or two. I mean, I've been on that for almost 10 years, so I know, but I understand the sheer complexity of what they have to go through. This is going to be made much easier in future versions in 3.0 and then 3.1, but this is something that I think we need to, attach a high priority.
That's a good point. Cedric, then we're going to need to move on a bit. Please.
For me, what is missing the most in the global registry is the mapping. So if you put the point, for instance, to add a new dimension is cumbersome, but if you declare, well, in the global registry, a mapping from the version without the new dimension and with the dimension, you can adapt your system using the mapping. So at least, yeah, it would be really nice on all the concepts what are some relationship to declare all these mappings that are not for now in the global registry. So, and this.
I'm not sure if we have a single mapping in the global registry at the moment. Actually. No, maybe like a test one. I'm not sure. Yeah, and part of it is also the difficulty to maintain them.
But it's an habit if you create a new version of one TSD to at the same time to sync compatibility for to declare the mapping with the previous version at least. Like this would be.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you.
Just to say, we have used internally lots of SDMX mappings between our old data models and new data models. So we maintained for a while the old data warehouse and the new data warehouse. And so while we were constructing the new data models, we had everything mapped from the previous data model, and we had kind of dual publication channels in the old model and the new models. We learned that it's not so terribly difficult to maintain mappings, especially in the 3.0 version of the standard. And later on we realized that there is a huge demand externally, because once we finished the migration and we switched off our old data warehouse, then we started having flooding in questions of, okay, could you share the mapping for me, because
From users, from outside
the
users.
selection from your old data warehouse,
yeah,
but
okay.
I want to be able to identify the ones in the new data warehouse. So I think we have to get into the habit of, even if it's extra maintenance, to
do the mapping as well.
Have some mappings exposed because they serve lots of use cases.
Before we move on to the next question, I do have one maybe comment. One thing that I don't like as well about the global DSDs, I just thought of it, is we mentioned it as well at some point in the previous days, that we are constantly redeclaring the same concepts, right? That we don't point to, so for national accounts, we have a national accounts concept scheme, which has referee op status, and then we have one for BOP, and we have one for CPI, but we're talking always about the same concepts, but it doesn't look like it. I mean, from the SDMX point of view, they're different objects. And it would make more sense for me, for the common cross-domain concepts, to have them refer directly to the global cross-domain concept scheme, rather than recreating the thing. Also, in a fair perspective, to make it easier for people to understand that we are talking about the same concept and not like copies.
That's partly because the cross-domain concept scheme came after global DSDs.
But we keep on doing it. I mean, we have DSDs that came after and that have followed the same approach, right?
That's not good.
But also we have to get in the habit to then use local representations much more often, because as Alan mentioned, one way is to pile up all the different variations of code lists into one giant code list, which I don't think is a good practice. The other way is to have kind of clean classifications, but then to flip them out in and out depending on the DSD while referring the same global concept.
All right, we still have a few minutes to discuss the other points. Maintenance, any ideas on how we could improve the maintenance? I'm open to very low-level ideas, right? I don't know, like, please.
I guess it's the same comment that I made, because I don't think that we have a written process for, well, actually like a template process, for creating a global DSD, like the project management workflow, and going from implementation and what's an extension of that would be the maintenance. I mean, I think we may have these for DSDs in general, but global DSDs are a bit of a different beast, right? The scope is a lot broader. The audience is far broader as well. So.
Okay. I'm going to take here the suggestion by Cédric before. I think it would be important to have, like, if I want to add a code to observation status and I want to propose it to the SWG, what do I do? How do I do that? I send an email to contact@sdmx.org and hope it works, and we can follow it?
I mean, we say to people, contact the SWG, basically.
Yeah, it would be better to have a view of open issues like Git or something that allows people to know that a request has been done for this, and
we wanted to go there because we started like a GitHub repository, but it became a bit too hard to manage, just in terms of we went back to this like SharePoint community. But I agree.
I think the PWG approach would be better.
Yeah, but it's a bit of a different thing. We comment on documents.
Glenn first, then Abdullah.
Yeah, generally, I mean, on maintenance system management or structural metadata, which I guess is sort of more general to this. Matt and I have been thinking about whether we could implement in some ways like more Git style process with sort of forks and branches and pull requests and things. So it would be really interesting, generally and obviously specifically in this context, whether that might help. Generally with these sort of activities where a lot of people need to collaborate on this.
So a Git style process for the artifacts themselves.
Yeah, exactly right. So,
a Git style process for the artifacts, for the maintenance.
So there's a proposal to have like almost like a repo for each like cross-domain artifacts, and then people can raise issues. That's quite good.
Well, of course, yeah, obviously, you know, the Git process was obviously designed where you have obviously some unique collaboration and basically control to software. I quite like this as
Abdullah.
Yeah, I mean, I was, when you were talking about how in order to update the label of a single code, you have to update the GSD and the data flows. I mean, I completely feel your pain. I mean, it's also refreshing to know that not all the issues are working in the case of the SDGs because they don't have that many artifacts to update. But this is why it's so important to automate that. This is why I kept asking about support for the manipulation of structural metadata in libraries like BiasDMX. Because we could develop scripts for automated cascading the updates to made to an artifact, and they could even be probably reusable. Maybe they could even be based on DTL, I don't know, you tell me. But this is something that, I mean, of course it's going to get much easier starting SDMX 3.0, but even in 2.1, this automation would be terrible.
All right. I am quite conscious of the time. It's raining right now. Okay. I didn't even notice that we're under. No, there's a roof directly above us. I mean, buildings in Amsterdam are usually quite vertical, and this one isn't. Okay, implementation issues. So, like interoperability implementation issues, pool approach. Any thoughts about how we could increase interoperability or decrease the case at least where, yes, we're both implementing the standard, but in a slightly different way, and we end up with the same interoperability problems we wanted to avoid? Abdullah.
Yeah, on the second point, on the pool approach, I know exactly why this is taking place. It's because of very limited support and tools. Pool approach will take off when it's better implemented in tools, and then unfortunately there are issues there that some of these issues are difficult to resolve. It's easy, I mean should be relatively easy to issue a notification when an update has taken place. But to receive that notification in a generic manner, to create generic software that can add on receiving a notification and put data into a database, that is more difficult. Not unresolvable, but more difficult. But at least on the sending notifications, that I think that support should improve.
Okay. Other ideas on interoperability or pool approach?
The notification that already exists, doesn't it? From the global rails? I mean, you can
it does.
Yeah, so that already exists.
It does exist. Yeah. How many datasets can you subscribe to?
Yeah. I just thought.
No, it does exist. It's supported, but there is nothing much. I think in Eurostat we did it. I think OECD did it.
But only experimentally.
Experimentally, right? Not even officially.
I think it's in place, but I don't know any other.
I think there's one.
There's one. It's in the global registry. There's one. Yes, the OECD one was not. And I'm not sure if it's technical. And to me, it's something that could be powerful. I mean, we keep it a bit hidden, right? But imagine that you can actually say to people that you have, you can subscribe to or even retrieve actually in global registry data from all these organizations, and we don't use it. Sorry?
Receive an email for each change that is not on the DSDs.
For the objects, yes, but I'm talking about the data registry, the data itself.
Yeah, this tool is supported. It's it's used on the IMF's SDMX Central, I think, as well. So it's sort of well tested in that aspect.
Well, I think it's different, I don't. So when Luca said that some people are using, I remember a discussion 3 years ago with Danielle. It's here somewhere. He's going to talk this afternoon. about it. I can't remember that. I was going to ask this question since the beginning. Where is it? Because I can't remember there was one test and we proved it, but I don't know if it's working.
Yeah, it is.
Is it?
Yeah, so you can set up notifications to legislation.
But what's the infrastructure behind it?
It's
Just HTTP?
Well, it's email, actually.
Okay. Oh yeah, that's...
I don't know if you can also get HTTP.
Hopefully you can have a push. I mean, you could, but it's not really
You could, because I remember...
You could monitor the API as well to see the...
Yeah, one of the problems that the technology is bad for that, you know, Kafka or whatever. So mail is very bad.
That could be a point indeed, yeah.
So maybe we should do something in technology for that, because that's something we have interest in.
Anyway, the mechanism exists. The basic technology is a little outdated because the specification, the conforms to the SDMX specification on this, which this sort of email or HTTP post is particularly useful. The alternative is to monitor the RSS feed. You can do that, and actually you can do that relatively easy with a Python script or something like that. The alternative is obviously get the DWG to sort of update the subscription notification process. Obviously things like webhooks,
And that makes sense. That's just to answer your question, because there was this task force on international data cooperation that was trying to implement this.
When I joined the IMF, we were at the end of the discussion, but that's why there was something working.
There is something working. There is, and it's under that framework that, for example, under the framework, the OECD put something in test and it never went into production. Eurostat did it under that framework. The IMF have their data exposed, but not registered on the. And the task force in theory still exists, but we have like a meeting once a year, have the people show up, and we say, yeah, we have some problems. And then, I mean, there doesn't seem to be a very strong drive anymore. There was a really strong push from the ownership group 5 years ago to get it done.
And the data gaps initiative was
that's the one.
That's the driver.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And we have, I mean, the issues still remain because the whole idea was to reduce the number of inconsistency. And we have developed on our side a report that kind of looks at the disseminated national accounts GDP figures for all sponsors and looks at discrepancies. And I think they run it in our national accounts unit once a month. And there's always discrepancies. Huh? So it still happens. It's still relevant, but it's lost a bit of steam.
I thought we should push the pool.
I can say, I mean, I was involved in the project with Daniel, as you might mention, and I mean, we did do the test and we did receive the data. So I'm just saying that the post HTTP also worked for us. So we could actually receive the data. We got notification with a link to where we get the data. And that was very fun.
Okay. So, Abdullah, and then Cedric.
Interoperability. The example you gave when a country sends a data set and it's not rejected by two international agencies, it's telling. And it's clearly a very bad design. But the UNSD is not better. We have the same issues for DSDGs. I think that we should establish and promote a good practice of abstracting from specific formats, specific SDMX formats. If you create a software for data exchange, then we should state it and promote it that it's a good practice to accept any format as long as it's SDMX compliant. I mean, converting from one format to another is a trivial operation, right? Unfortunately, sometimes it's difficult to convince people that this is how things should be done. And if there is an established good practice which is promoted across our community, that don't create software that expects structure-specific data, or don't create software that expects compact data. Create software that will accept any format like DLM does, for example, and convert it. That's it.
Question: does the TCK test for this potentially like test all different formats, or it's more like you set it for one format and you?
No, I think TCK should.
Like
in which formats are supported by the service.
So it can be something that is already. Stratos, please.
For a TCK
case, the idea is to test the REST API, and the formats are only assessed in the sense that there are a few queries, as far as I remember, tested formats, but not the whole API, which might be an issue, but you can imagine that it will increase the testing exponentially.
Yeah, of course.
Pretty much if we try to test all the code.
Okay, well, we should close it. Yeah, Cedric, please. Sorry, you had raised your hand already.
I come back to your code list with Kosovo, which are almost identical. I wonder how, if you decide at one point to have just one code list, what happens with the global registry? You will still have the old code list for compatibility issues with previous DSD and things like this. I wonder if there is not a way to make some things, if you agree to a new way and to restructure a bit, to make as obsolete all the things that are not really used anymore, but should remain for
I think it makes sense. Do we have a way, because right now when we have codes that are obsolete, we kind of mark them as deprecated, but we change the label, right, and mark them as deprecated. Is there a way in the standard to say that an object is obsolete or deprecated? I don't remember this. To mark it somehow, because it would be a stronger indication than the label right now that we use, saying this is not should not be
There's a
used.
validity period, isn't there? We should use that. The
True.
validity period,
But we don't often use it. Yeah. All right. Thank you, everyone, for the good discussion and nice conclusions. And now we can conclude. Were you waiting outside, Galia?
I have here my notes.
Okay. I have them here. So what you can do is you can share your screen and go through if you want, and just to quickly summarize main points if you want. Or you do it orally without...
Yeah, we do it. So we don't have time maybe just to share on my screen.
As you wish. All right. So, please sit down. We only have 10 minutes until the coffee break, and the point is to have a quick summary of the different breakout sessions. So, first of all, I would like to thank all of you for the good ideas, and I have a ready-made set of conclusions that I can put in my mission report, and I'm already happy because of that. So thank you for writing my report for this conference. I'll go through some of the ideas here, then I'll leave it to Galia to complement with what they discussed downstairs. You know, my grandmother always said that I should have become a doctor, and I didn't. But the handwriting part I got down, huh? Okay. So in the group that stayed upstairs, we discussed the availability of DSDs, and there were some nice ideas coming out. So we discussed a bit some potential domains which could be easy pickings, let's say, to create a global DSD, either because kind of a shared DSD already exists, but is not endorsed as a global DSD. This is energy, research and development, or because we already have a shared data collection that could be structured using SDMX. This was the case of health, and especially health accounts was mentioned in this regard. Labor as well is something that is seen as being a low-hanging fruit because the work, most of the work has been done in developing the labor DSD. It's just that we have the remaining 5% until publication, which is still pending. And there were some quite good ideas about how to make it easier or more appealing for countries to use DSDs and develop global DSDs, which was a discussion about incentives and maybe having DSDs that are more for dissemination that countries can then use directly. And in a global DSD package, even if it's more for data reporting, you could think of having, okay, I have in the package one DSD for data reporting and one for dissemination. So the whole package becomes more useful to the community as a whole. People get something out of it besides reporting. And there is more incentives, therefore, to have them. When it comes to modeling, well, I think here we discussed a bit a hodgepodge of different issues in the current DSDs, especially the one for macroeconomic statistics. We discussed a bit some issues in balance of payments, DSD, specific issues in the national accounts, CSD. But there were a couple of points I want to highlight. The idea of making it easier somehow to customize a global DSD for national use. That could really make it then, if we're able to solve this, it could simplify things a lot. It's a modeling problem that is seen as a drawback. And the idea of emphasizing mappings more than we do now. Right now we have basically no mappings available, but if we do publish mappings, then maybe some of the compatibility issues or transition issues when we change DSDs could be lessened. And we had some interesting experience being shared by the OECD on that, because as part of their migration, they had to make those mappings, and they found them to be very useful. Then we discussed maintenance, and here I think there were some good proposals for maybe having a more Git-like environment for maintaining the cross-domain concepts, which would both make it maybe easier to collaborate on such changes, but also give a way to report issues or questions. Because right now, indeed, if you want to have a new code, you send an email, you hope for a response, and you don't really have visibility on where this is in the pipeline. Huh? And then finally, when it comes to implementation and interoperability issues, good discussion. Here we discussed the pool approach. We said that the reason it hasn't taken off is also because there's not very good support for it in tools, and especially for sending the update notification. This is something that should come out of the box in many tools. Also from the point of view of the pool, the subscription is via email, and maybe there is more advanced technologies that we could use to facilitate the ingestion of the subscription message. We discussed a bit also to facilitate interoperability, to maybe have a clearer indication of when objects are deprecated, or use the available means to do that, the validity periods, which we don't usually use. So it's difficult for someone to understand what is this thing still valid? Should I still use it or not? Which then can create issues down the road. And there was a discussion to have kind of as a good practice for all SDMX tool developers to accept all formats, at least of a given SDMX version, right? If I say I'm SDMX 3.0 compliant, you should be able to accept all formats, and it's something that could be included as well somehow in the TCK as one of the tests, and understood that it's partially included. All right, that's it. I hope I made a good summary of this, and I leave it to Galia to give us the summary of what you discussed.
Yeah. So I tried to be faster because the coffee break is coming. So we discussed some proposal which statistical domains could be the best candidates for further global DSDs, and we have the concrete proposals for example, for environmental statistics and climate change statistics. statistics, and also tax revenue statistics, and population and demography statistics, financial economic fields, and monetary statistics, and governmental statistics as well. And one comment by Juan, I think, yeah, if I remember correctly, that DSDs, when we are talking about the global DSDs, we should talk about the DSDs for statistical domains, but not for statistical programs. Yeah, this was an important comment. And so for the what could be done to push the creation of these global DSDs, the one proposal for the establishing the task force or working groups to decide how to follow and which global DSDs are the could be the best candidates. Also to creation of a channel for submitting proposals, some online platforms or something like that to discuss before to start the real creation of DSD, because it could act as a public call for interest for the broad public, not only internally. Also. Data modeling in real time. Dani made a very, very good proposal that data modeling should be done in a real time. For example, data modeling for national accounts should start parallel with preparation of methodological document. So, yeah. So parallel work should be done. Yeah. What else for data modeling in global DSD? Which are the issues? We defined just a few main issues, too many dimensions, for example, for balance of payments, DSDs. So technical assistance might be needed in this case to manage these too many dimensions. So balance, simplicity, and efficiency needed here. What else? Global DSD is not inclusive for front players or stakeholders. Modeling approach, I thought instead of the domain approach, and some dimensions used in wrong ways. It's one of the conclusions. So, regarding the maintenance of global DSDs, one of the proposals is to have internal quarterly review. So that lists are shorter, not to change every 3 months, but to have our internal reviews every 3 months, and then only once in a year during the annual release procedure to change the artifacts and all artifacts. So. Of course, to use semantic versioning, it is going to be easier communication on impact. To have a guidelines for extension of code lists as well. This is one other proposal, and difficult to for some users. It's difficult to identify the versions, so more communications for changes is needed as well. And just few words for the implementation issues. A hub to collect information for DSDs is needed, additional to global SDMX registry. regarding the obstacles which exist to the implementation of the pool approach, there are some technical and security limitations, and also computational resources for some countries are needed. For example, cloud approach could help to improve. Yeah. So this is shortly, but I will send my notice to you, Luca. Yeah.
Perfect.
Thank you.
So Gali and I are going to take all of this and put it at some point after the workshop, we're going to try to publish a summary, right? So we're going to put the main conclusions there. I would like to thank you for this productive session, for being, as I mentioned, a bit my therapist for the past couple of hours. And I think we can go to our coffee break. We went 5 minutes over the foreseen time, but I would like to, well, the effect is that you'll have a shorter coffee break. Let's be back at 11:30 for Abdullah's session. Thank you very much.